Welcome inside the Broncos Media Center for another edition of Broncos A to Z, everyone. I'm Alexis Perry alongside my good friend Zach Stevens as we relive the Broncos' Week 2 win over the Houston Texans. Similar to Week 1, mental mistakes were the story for much of the Broncos' home opener, but unlike that game in Seattle, this time the Broncos were able to overcome them. Zach, we saw some good things that this team could build off of, especially late in the game, but obviously there was a ton that this team really needs to clean up. So now that we're a couple of days removed from Denver's first win of this new era, what are some of the things that stand out the most to you?
Well, it's always best to learn from a win, and that's what the Broncos did. Unlike last week, the Broncos get the win, and they're in fine position. When you look at the Broncos, 1-1, tied with the Chargers for second in the division. But like you said, Alexis, a lot that the Broncos can learn from. A lot of game management things that we saw that Nathaniel Hackett on Monday said he needs to do a much better job. He needs to get better as a coach. And the Broncos on defense, though, 9 points allowed. There's a lot of good things that happened in the game, too, specifically on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, although the road to victory was a rocky one, the Broncos were glad that they were able to turn boos into cheers by the time the clock ran out in their home opener. Here's a look back at how they were able to do just that.
Welcome to a sun-drenched Empower Field at Mile High as today the Denver Broncos open their home schedule of the 2022 regular season, hosting the Houston Texans. Broncos looking for their first win of the season after that disappointing loss on Monday night.
I know it's only Week 2, Dave, but this is a must-win game for this football team. Make some noise today, Broncos country, and enjoy the ride.
For your 2022 Denver Broncos, number 3, Russell Wilson.
Good luck, gentlemen. Fireworks here early, but no real big explosions. Misfiring in the red zone again. They settle for a field goal.
Six-man pressure. Mills has the ball stripped away. Inside the 30, the ball is free. First minute of action here in the third quarter. Broncos down 3. Play fake for Russ. He looks, he floats one. He wants Saubert. Saubert is there. He makes the catch. Touchdown, Denver! The Broncos are going to get their first win of the season with a 16-9 victory over the Houston Texans.
Well, this time 16 points were enough to get the dub, but with a fast and physical 49ers team coming into town, the Broncos will need to quickly find a way to be more productive offensively. Of course, injuries to KJ Hamler and Jerry Jeudy didn't help the cause on Sunday, but Russell Wilson was inconsistent early before finding some rhythm in the fourth quarter. Zach, as you give out your Week 2 grades, anywhere from A to Z, of course, what are you giving Russell Wilson in his Denver debut?
A C, not because it's average, but because of Courtland Sutton. That's what Russell Wilson was this week. He just went to Courtland Sutton. Russell Wilson ended 14 of 31, not the percentage you're looking for, not the game that Russell Wilson's looking for, but when he went to Courtland Sutton, he was 7 for 11 with 122 yards. When he went to any other wide receiver on the team, he was 7 for 20 for only 97 yards. So this game was when Courtland Sutton really found a rhythm with Russell Wilson. And we saw it the week before. It was with Jerry Jeudy who got a 100-yard game. This one was all for Courtland. When he looked Courtland's way, it was great. When he didn't, there's a lot of improvement there.
Well, Javonte Williams, 15 carries for 75 yards, picked up 64 yards after contact. What letter of the alphabet do you think is best suited for Williams this week?
An M. Javonte Williams maximized every opportunity that he got in the first 12 rushes that he had before the 3 where the Broncos were just running out the clock. Javonte Williams averaged 6.5 yards per carry, but he only got 12 attempts. Typically, if a running back's getting 6.5 yards per carry, you're going to see them in the 20s, maybe even 25 carries. But with Melvin Gordon there, they're going to distribute the ball more. So Javonte Williams, when he got the ball, he was great.
Well, last week we discussed the undisciplined play that resulted in a dozen flags being thrown against the Broncos. This week at home, they committed 13, totaling 100 yards, including a 5-yard penalty that kept Brandon McManus from adding another 3 points to the board. So what letter are you giving this glaring issue this week?
A W. And the reason for that is twofold. One, it's as far away from A as you can possibly get, and they're far away from A on this. And I couldn't give them a Z because what would I be saying about myself if that was the case? And twofold is what the heck is going on here, Alexis? That's back-to-back weeks of 12 or more penalties. Their 25 penalties in the first 2 games is the most in the NFL. The team with the second most penalties has 17. So the Broncos have 8 more penalties than the second most penalized team in the NFL. This has to change. It is going to be a major point of emphasis, not only from the unnecessary roughness, but the penalties that you can change and fix, the false starts, all of those penalties. It has to change, and it has to change quickly.
Defensively, as a unit, they have not given up a touchdown in 6 quarters of play, and this week the front 7 really did their part to make Davis Mills' life a little bit more difficult. Draymond Jones had his 5th multi-sack game of his career, which included a strip sack as well. So what are some of the ways that you've seen him elevate his game this year, and what letter are you giving him this week?
A D, and not because it's anywhere close to a failing grade, because he's disruptive in the middle of that defensive line. And what do we know? The Broncos have great outside rushers in Randy Gregory and Bradley Chubb. If they get that push from the inside, they're going to be so hard to stop this year. And so far, Draymond Jones is showing that he's taking that next step up in terms of a pass rusher. 2 sacks on the day, and also getting his hand on the ball to force a strip sack. That is just huge. If the Broncos continue to get that from him, they're going to be a very tough defense to slow down.
Well, last but certainly not least, the veteran pass rusher Randy Gregory. He got his first sack as a Bronco and finished the day with 4 hurries. Zach, what caught your eye in his performance, and what grade are you giving him?
A V for violent, because that's the type of player Randy Gregory is. When he's on the field, he's violent. We've heard Nathaniel Hackett talk about that in the past. He tried to kill Davis Mills when he got that sack. It was such a violent hit. Draymond Jones after the game said he's a rough and tough guy when he gets on the field, and we saw every part of that this week.
Well, coming up after the break, Randy Gregory will be in studio to share what he'll remember most about his first game in Denver and the ways he hopes to contribute even more in the future. Don't go anywhere.
Wilson hands it off, and a big hole for Javonte Williams. 40-45, leaps over a tackler and is upended right at midfield. That is a 17-yard run on 2nd and 22. The tackle there by Jonathan Owens. Russell in the pocket, steps up, climbs, throws the ball. He's got a wide open receiver. Sutton makes the catch. He's got a first down. Gets up with a left arm extended, points to the Broncos end zone. That's a place they'd like to go. Play fake for Russ. He looks, he floats one. He wants Saubert. Saubert is there. He makes the catch. Touchdown, Denver. Eric Saubert, his first catch of the season. A touchdown of 22 yards from Russell Wilson.
Another very cool perspective from the great Dave Logan. Speaking of greats, Randy Gregory was the Broncos' biggest free agent pickup this offseason, and so far, he's playing up to his big-time contract. In his first 2 games, he has 3 quarterback hits, a tackle for a loss, 1 sack, and a league-leading 2 forced fumbles. In fact, Gregory's 2 forced fumbles puts him in the conversation with the great Von Miller as the only 2 Broncos to have 2 forced fumbles in the first 2 weeks of a season since the turn of the century. Alexis is standing by with Randy to get his biggest takeaways from week 2.
Thanks so much, Zach. Randy, the Broncos are now 1-1, coming off a nice big win over the Houston Texans. What will you remember most about your first win with the Broncos?
Just going out there with my guys, making some plays. Obviously, the win's the main goal, so being able to get that and plan to have, many more.
Well, you had a huge strip sack late in the game. You put the Texans in a 2nd and 19 situation on a must-have drive for them. Take us back to that play, what you saw, and how you brought down Davis Mills.
I think at that point it was maybe about 2.5 minutes left, so we knew we're pretty much in 2-minute mode. A lot of passes, things like that are going to be coming out. I think at that point they had 2 chips, tight end on my side, running back on the other. I knew I was going to have the guard there on the inside, so I didn't really have an inside move. I had to get around the chip, so I had to take an outside route. And at that point, I'm level with the quarterback, got to make a move, chose to rip. And ended up getting to the quarterback, tried to punch the ball out the best way I can and hope for the best. So big play, got to have more of those.
Felt good?
Felt good.
Felt real good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course. Well, your stat line proves that you did a lot in that game, but you said post-game that you want to do even more. So what are the first steps to doing more?
Just, making an impact in as many ways possible, all, facets of the game, whether it be, leadership, picking guys up, whether we had a bad series before, helping out the offense the best way I can based off what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, things like that. So just different ways you can affect the game. I'm an edge rusher. I'm supposed to sack the quarterback, but at the end of the day, I'm a ball player. I'm an athlete, football player. We have great brotherhood in the room and on this team, and so we each want to try to help each other out and piggyback off of each other. So.
Well, this Denver defense hasn't allowed a touchdown in 6 quarters of play. What is working so well for this unit as a whole?
I think trust. At the end of the day, trust, believing in your teammates, believing in yourself, believing in the staff, the culture, the plays, being able to play fast, knowing your playbook, things like that. Makes it a lot easier to go out there and perform at a high rate.
Yeah, you've had 6 sacks twice in your career. What makes you think that you can reach that number and maybe even more this year in Coach E's defense?
Well, I think it goes back to confidence. I know what I can do. I trust in Coach E's defense. I watched them play last year, obviously win the Super Bowl with the Rams, and how they were able to use some of their guys on defense is how I want to be used. And so I have that opportunity. I think big things for me is always being healthy and being available. I think in the past I haven't been able to do that. So this year, it's always been my goal going into every game is just coming out healthy.
Well, you and Bradley Chubb are quickly becoming one of the most dynamic pass rushing duos in the league. How do you guys push each other, make each other better, both in practice and throughout the game? I
mean, we talk about it. I think we talked about it after the game and before the game and throughout the week, just, building competition, and we thrive in that atmosphere. So just having healthy competition within our rooms, trying to push each other to get to the quarterback as fast as possible, who can get there first, what they're seeing on one side of the line as opposed to what I'm seeing, and how we can help each other out. So, making it fun. Obviously it's a kid's sport, but it's a man's game, and so we try to have fun with it at the same time while taking it serious.
I think after having a strong start to the season, it's easy for people to forget that you started training camp on the PUP list. So what does it mean to you to go through everything that you've been through and see that your productivity hasn't been affected?
It feels good, just having a little bit of bevalidation and being able to go out there and make plays and, feel like myself again. Obviously, catching an injury bug is not the greatest, and, being in the training room, constantly getting rehab, stuff like that, it can be kind of taxing. But, props to the training staff, props to, George Payton and those guys believing in me, and me showing up to work every day, making sure I got my body right, because at the end of the day, like I said, just availability is the best thing you can have in this league, and I understand the importance of that. So being able to take care of those things in the off season so I can be prepared for week 1 has always been the main goal.
Well, obviously this week a huge game, Sunday Night Football up against the 49ers. What do you want to see this Broncos team as a whole improve on heading into this game?
Just to have a fully complete game. I think we've had spurts there where we played well together, whether that be offense, defense, special teams, but the main goal is to have a complete game. Obviously it's early on in the season, you want to have those complete games towards the tail end of the year, but building that confidence up throughout the year is important. So this week, just trying to put it all together as a unit, cut down on the penalties is always big. No turnovers, creating turnovers, things like that. Hopefully we'll have a full, complete game.
Well, Randy, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
Zach, back over to you.
Great to hear from the game wrecker himself. After the break, Alexis and I are going to preview Denver's next opponent, the new look, or should I say old look, San Francisco 49ers. With Trey Lance out, do the Broncos face an even tougher game this Sunday going up against Jimmy Garoppolo? We'll break it down next on Broncos A to Z.
Thanks for sticking with us for this final segment of Broncos A to Z, everyone. While there will be numerous meetings, walkthroughs, and practices between today and the Broncos' Sunday Night Football showdown against the 49ers, it is time for our way too early game preview, where we will touch on the most notable hypotheticals heading into Week 3. Starting with some of the injuries sustained this past Sunday, Jerry Jeudy and Pat Surtain had MRIs on Monday, and thankfully they revealed both guys will be day-to-day this week. While this is great news, it does not mean that we will see one or both of these these guys this week. So Zach, if Jerry and or Pat both need maybe an extra week to recover, how could that impact this week's game?
Well, it has a huge impact. Both of those players do. And when you look at Jerry Jeudy, he had 100 receiving yards in the first game with Russell Wilson. This next game, he gets hurt early in the game, and then Russell Wilson pretty much locks on exclusively to Courtland Sutton for the rest of the game. Russell Wilson having Jerry Jeudy on the field opens up the passing game so much, so that's key. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Pat Surtain, what's so great about him is you're able to just put him on one side of the field and then let the defense work with the other side and everything else that's going on. If you don't have Pat Surtain out there, then you're going to have to play the defense a lot more different.
Well, in other injury news, Trey Lance suffered a season-ending ankle injury against the Seahawks, so it's Jimmy G's time to shine in the Bay Area once again. Zach, what are some of the pros and cons of this Denver defense taking on Jimmy G over Trey Lance?
Well, the big play threat is no longer there with Jimmy G in at quarterback
Ouch.
for Trey Lance. I know, but unfortunately, what Jimmy G does so well is he's so effective,
yes,
and he makes the right reads. Look, he's been to the Super Bowl once. He's been to the NFC Championship multiple times, including last year. So with Jimmy G in, unfortunately, I think this is going to be an even tougher game for the Broncos because now they're essentially playing the team that was in the NFC Championship game last year. So I think to me, for this week, it makes it a lot tougher.
Any easier, though, given the fact that they have all the tape on Jimmy G?
Definitely, certainly. And then also Justin Simmons, you don't have to worry about not having him as much because that deep threat isn't going to be there.
Well, veteran tight end George Kittle has missed the first 2 games of the season, but if he can go this week, how does his presence really change what this Broncos defense is focused on this week?
Well, we know it's been a narrative for a long time that the Broncos have issues covering tight ends, and George Kittle is one of the best that's out there, especially with the Broncos not having Justin Simmons back there to help with George Kittle. That's another game changer here. So we're talking about 3 potential players, 2 on the Broncos, 1 on the 49ers, who will have a very big impact on this game, and we're not sure if they're going to play.
Well, obviously, we'll be keeping our eye on the daily injury report for both teams, but in addition to overcoming those, what are some of the keys to victory for the Broncos this week, Zach?
The Broncos are going to have to capitalize in the red zone, something they have not been able to do. They're 0 for 6 in the red zone to start the season, yet they're 1-1 in those games. Typically, when you don't have success in the red zone, you're not going to see wins. So the Broncos have a little bit of advantage there, but they're going to have to score the ball when they get in the red zone. They're going to have to get in the end zone. And what I would recommend, give the ball to Javonte Williams. He's been so good outside of his 1 fumble, which he did have in the red zone, which was killer. But then they completely went away from running the ball. Russell Wilson was 0 for 5 against the Texans throwing the ball when the team was 5 yards out of the end zone. So they're just going to have to fix that, get in the end zone once or twice, and they're going to give themselves a chance.
Yes, and get those calls in a little bit quicker as well. Well, that is all the time we have for Broncos A to Z. A reminder to tune in to the full game preview this Friday at 5 o'clock on Broncos Weekend. We will leave you now with the best still images from Week 2, snapped by team photographer Gabriel Christus. We'll see you next time.